This video will provide you with insight into contemporary strategy practices that ultimately represent a reinvention of the way you do strategy. That is, a transformation from the template-driven annual strategic plan to a program of continual strategy renewal. My name is Paul Hunter. I'm the author of the book, The 7 Inconvenient Truths of Business Strategy, and also the Chief Executive of the Strategic Management Institute, the authorising body certifying strategy practitioners as a profession. The first inconvenient truth of strategy is the key inhibitor to effective strategic management. It is the continued use of the ubiquitous strategic plan. Launched in the mid-1960s, planning is one of the earliest tools to be applied to the strategy discipline. It is still used by up to 90% of organisations today. Developed in an era of great certainty, a time when the population was booming, consumerism was emerging, and credit fueling growth, there was little need for anything more. Fast forward to today, an era of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity all around. The use of a static strategic plan is no longer valid. The next 6 inconvenient truths of strategy are a natural outcome from the first, which relate to planning's apparent lack of relevance. These inconvenient truths start with the recognition that strategy is an undefined and dynamic system, one that operates as a continuum rather than a closed-loop process. The real benefit of the recognition of this reality is the fact that a systems perspective allows us to understand causality. That is, everything is linked and interlinked. This in turn enables strategy practitioners to strategize within a context of continual review and renewal. Complementary to this newfound ability is the next inconvenient truth of strategy. This is the observation that it is mandatory to measure the continued effectiveness of the assumptions, guesstimates, and estimates that went into the foundation of strategy content, as well as the more usual areas of concern that are predominantly the expected outcomes from a strategy. In many cases, it may only be possible to assess the effectiveness of the strategic plan when it is concluded, some 3 to 5 years after that plan was written. The next inconvenient truth is concerned with the fact that without a clear appreciation of certainty, relevance, and knowledge about the future, strategy implementation is notoriously unsuccessful. This, though, may always be the case unless due consideration is given to continued alignment of the business to its environment. In a world where change is an inevitable eventuality in both the internal and external environment, a lack of alignment exposes strategy to the threat of further loss of relevance. Because individual subconscious preferences combine with a lack of appreciation of a common understanding of the concept of strategy itself, the next inconvenient truth of strategy recognizes there is also an invisible adverse influence at play that inhibits the effectiveness of decision-making in teams. There is, therefore, significant reason to validate a proposal of making strategy a profession. The degree of formality and discipline demanded by a profession will automatically drive a common language, a common explanation of what strategy is. As a result, it will become an apparent basis upon which strategy practitioners can join together globally to manage, practice, and strategy more effectively at that level of a profession. We now arrive at the fully integrated strategic management framework. This framework provides a structure to strategy and a mental model around which you can frame your strategic thinking. The framework, as an integrated piece, is made up of a considerable amount of different perspectives of strategy. Much of it will appear familiar to you, some of it may not. Vision and mission will be familiar to you. They are the foundation around which long-term strategy is defined. Long-term strategy is illustrated here as a strategic architecture. This is a structure to strategy in itself. As you can see, it consists of the well-known markets and or resources, but equally activities that are undertaken to either differentiate the firm from competitors or transforming activities that are undertaken to improve the resource base to also provide a source of competitiveness in the long term. The strategic plan, then, is a different entity to the long-term strategy. Long-term strategy, as in the case of Toyota, can last for more than 50 years. A strategic plan is typically 3 to 5 years in perspective, and it describes the way in which the long-term strategy will be implemented in that short term. In the development of a strategic plan, a considerable amount of review and analysis is required, and that content provides input to the strategic plan, but it may also be used to provide an update to the long-term strategy. In this context, then, you can see that both the strategy and strategic planning columns are starting to become a system in their own right. We can, though, add to the system the next program of continual strategy renewal that, in effect, is the basis upon which we propose the reinvention of strategic planning. Rather than have a strategic plan as a static document, we suggest it is made a program of continual strategy renewal. That program has its strategy blueprint as a starting point, and out of that blueprint, a strategic change agenda that describes the way in which assumptions will be tested, the plan will be implemented, and the stakeholders involved in the program will be engaged. The blueprint is the same structure as the strategic architecture, but is concerned with the short term, not the long term. It is, in fact, an articulation of the strategic plan in the same structure as the architecture. In dealing with the short term, though, market positioning as an example will be concerned with what we're going to do in those markets, rather than a longer term perspective of markets, which defines which markets we will participate in. The interactive evaluation and monitoring mechanism is a systems-based analytical and potentially dashboard mechanism that provides visibility to the executive team, to the strategy, to the implementation of strategy, and to alerting mechanisms that may be required to test assumptions and bring that component of strategy to life. When aligned with external environment, we have a perfect system. Long-term strategy, short-term strategy, implementation of strategy, and then a filtering of strategy through the external environment factors and the internal factors that are the business units, people, the budgets, and the plans. When combined with a learning and development program, a knowledge accumulation program, a program of transformation and renewal, and the resolution of wicked strategic problems, the strategic plan is updated on a regular basis and a strategy of continual renewal enabled. That is the middle part of the alignment filters and the central fulcrum upon which the renewal of a strategic plan is based. To conclude, we have addressed the system and process issues of strategy through an identification of the 7 inconvenient truths of business strategy, but none of those make up for the fact that people are the centre of strategy deployment. The current standard of strategy is less than satisfactory. We propose making strategy a profession, and we invite you to join us to become a certified strategy practitioner. You can do so by approaching us on our website or by contacting us via email smi@smiknowledge.com. We sincerely look forward to hearing from you and to working with you in the making of strategy as a profession.